Good afternoon, my dear friends. Our last class in this cycle. And I apologize if the copies did not come super sharp, but
Not at all.
We
Not
never
at
got
all.
anything.
what? I sent the replaced copies. I see them, well, I don't know. Well, the caricature you saw, I hope.
Yeah,
Nope.
That tells a lot, that tells a story in many ways.
very eye-opening. Those cartoons were very eye-opening.
Yeah, and they are, it's an unbelievable story. Well, we are talking today about the Unholy Alliance between Nazi Germany and the Islam in the 40s, and what are the legacies of this peculiar alliance? I'll forward to you books to read that are new, relatively new in the last 10 years. And I think it's a mind-blowing experience to see it, to read it. Our story starts with Haj Amin al-Husseini. Was born in Jerusalem in 1895 to a prominent Palestinian family, equivalent with the Kennedys or the Bushes, a dynasty that was involved in politics in Ottoman Empire in Jerusalem, and later on in under the British administration, under the British mandate, from 2020 on up to 1948. What is peculiar about that family is a level of political extremism, that they took over the political discourse of the Palestinian people, and with the leadership of Haj Amin al-Husseini, they push it forward. Something very interesting about this character. He was a military officer in the Ottoman Empire. So at one point he was an Ottoman patriot, not like many other people who are Zionists. I'm sure you will be surprised to know that at some point in 2000, during World War I, the second president of Israel and the prime minister Ben Gurion were also Ottoman patriots. They wanted to be in the military in the Ottoman Empire, in the Ottoman army, fighting in World War I. No one really realized where things are going to move to. They believe that the Ottoman Empire will grant the Zionists a Jewish state, which of course never happened. After the war, we have eruption of violence in mandatory Palestine. There is mayhem in Jerusalem in March of 1920. Some Jews were killed in the Jewish quarter, and the instigator was Haj Amin a guy by the name of Amin al-Husseini. The British decided the way to co-opt this insurgent and this leader who they thought is charismatic is basically to nominate him as the chief, as the highest religious authority on the land of the Muslim community. Muslims themselves, peculiarly enough, were against this nomination because Amin al-Husseini was a lightweight in terms of theology. So guess who nominated him for this office? The first commissioner, the British commissioner, who was Sir Herbert Samuel, who was Jewish. And they put him as the Mufti of Jerusalem, and they gave him a supersized title the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, which was an invented title that was never in existence before. So now he's the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, which played very well into his lie, into the way that he used it. He was a shrewd politician. One thing, he was clear-minded all along throughout his life: hatred of Jews, not only of Zionists, but of Jews. He believed there is a Jewish conspiracy. The Jews wanted to establish a state in Palestine in order to have a base, and through this base to control the world affairs. This was a known conspiracy also shared by the Russian, at the time, secret police, and they manufactured what is known as the Elders of Zion, Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which spoke about some kind of an imaginary leadership of Jews, amorphous leadership that are basically had tentacles of a sea animal, and they are incorporate everything. They can be capitalists, they can be anarchists, they can be communists. The main idea that there is some kind of a cabal of Jewish leadership, of rabbis, elusive group of rabbis who control the world, and now they want a territorial base in Palestine. Go to the present day, and this is the ideology of white supremacy here in America. So unfortunately, what we are talking about is not safely located in some remote past, but there is a revival of this nutty, very menacing conspiracy theory in the present day. So this is our beloved Haj Amin al-Husseini. Something about Islam and Jews. I need to push a lot of material together. Islam was not hateful of Jews in the same way that Christianity is. When we read about Christianity, and we had a glimpse with the last week with the Black Death, there is a theological element. Jews are basically blamed for deicide, killing God. There is no more evil deed in Christian theology. Killing, crucifying Christ is the major element in Christian theology. And for that, there is the notion of original sin. Jews need to pay. So some in Christology are saying, well, they are witnesses. They need to be kept humble, humiliated, but alive. Others, later on, especially the what is known as the mendicant friars, like the Franciscan and the Dominicans, said no, they need to be forced to conversion or forced out of the land of Christendom. And of course, along the way, Jews were blamed with blood libel, that basically they are sacrificing babies, and you're familiar with this story. You don't find it in Islam. Islam is looking as a Jew at Christianity with derision, because for them, the notion of a human being who becomes God, like Jesus, is a major heresy. And they think about the Christian either as an infidel by idol worshippers. And for Muslim, idol worshipping is horrific. So in that respect, Jews are considered to be people who should, at one point in their existence, see the blessing of Muhammad and accept Islam, because Islam is the latest, the last and the ultimate revelation of the word of God. If you are going into libraries in Islamic universities, there is a protocol, I saw it in Jordan, that in religious studies, the Quran and Muslim books are on the top shelves, and below them you have books about Judaism and Christianity. And it's almost an issue of bylaws that are supposed to be basically observed. It was very interesting and shocking to see this. So the ultimate religion is Islam. So whoever is not a Muslim is basically need to be, he is not a citizen. He is subservient to the religious leadership of the country. There is a legal term for him, a dhimmi, D-I-H-I-M-M-I. And these are Jews and Christians as well. So in Islam, in pre-modern time, pre-19, I don't know, Muslims are at the top and the others are with limited privileges. It's really basically to the present day. In my encounter with the universities in Jordan and in Lebanon, Lebanon is actually much more progressive. It's as liberal as possibly you can find in terms of rights of people, men, women. But a place like Jordan, there is basically discrimination that is very clear to anyone who sees it. If you are Christian, and in Jordan, rumored that there are 10% Christians, but they don't take census at all. So half of them are Palestinian, the other less than 50% are Bedouins who control the country. But position university are always allocated, as far as I could tell, to Muslims. So there is this notion of a second-class individual citizens. Jews in this universe are expected, not now, but at the time before 1914, to be dressed differently, don't ride on horses, at one point or another not to build new synagogues, and to pay a poll tax as some kind of extra tax because they are not following the right religion. Now, in terms of the land of Israel, as we know it, by religious dogma of Islam, this is the Waqf. This is the sacred trust of Islam. Because according to some tradition, not in the Quran, Muhammad, on one of his tours, went to the site of the Temple Mount, and he basically he flew over a mythical animal, which is half horse, half supersized bird, and from there he jumped at the edge of the mountain, Al-Aqsa. He jumped to see Gabriel and God, and receive the revelation about Islam. The Quran, when it speaks about it, doesn't mention at all Jerusalem, but in later centuries, the tradition spoke about Jerusalem. Jerusalem is not mentioned in the Quran at all. Now, up to 1948, if you are going to talk to all the Muslims, religious, non-religious, the reference to Jerusalem is Al-Quds, which in Hebrew, Ira Kodesh, and the reference is always openly, they talk about Bet HaMikdash, Beis Mikdash, in Arabic, acknowledging the Jews built the temple that, on Temple Mount. After 48, and especially after 67, there is a denunciation, a systematic denunciation of in Muslim writing, especially Palestinian, regarding the relationship between Jews, Israel, and the Temple Mount. The extreme absurdities are talking about the fact that Jews never had a temple. Others are saying, well, if they had a temple, it was not here, rather it was in Yemen. So these are the layout of the outline of the element regarding relationship towards Judaism in Islam. It's very pressured, but the interesting issue, as I mentioned earlier, there is no theological dissonance or controversy or conflict between Islam and Judaism, in contrast to what we saw between Christianity and Judaism. I'll take a break and listen to comments and questions. Morris, you punch, and I saw any comments, questions before we? Judy, yes.
Well, if it was called Ir HaKodesh, and it was called, if they acknowledged its existence as a Jewish, what prompted the transition to it not being, and when?
Okay, so the transition took place when Israel basically came to existence in 1948. Furthermore, it became even more pronounced after 1967 when Israel took over the Temple Mount. And that really was a cause of unbelievable humiliation. There are reports, if we will have a class on the Arab-Israeli conflict, I'm not sure if I did it here or not. After 1967, I'll just tell you what I know because I was there. After 1967, in the Arab media, they couldn't believe that Israel, this slimy people who have no any backbone, and how could they win a war against all these Arab countries in 7 days, in 6 days? So and here what came. They said it's not the Jews who fought and won the war. The Vikings came and won the war for them. And the military and the airplanes that were used were American airplanes. So there is, and how do we know it? Of course, look, Jews are controlling Wall Street. Anyhow, they bought the American military and they bought the American president. So they know how to use the money in a very clever way. So this is the ultimate nonsensical conspiratorial story behind it. And there is a book of a good friend of mine who wrote about it, the transition from reality to mythical thinking about Jerusalem. Nowadays, every time there is an outburst of conflict in the Middle East, I mean, between Israel and Palestine, it always, the trigger point is some kind of a fake discussion about what is happening on the Temple Mount. So one element, unfortunately, there are lunatic Jews, extremists, who perpetrated this notion of the wish to create a temple, to rebuild a temple. And Hamas are using it to their advantage to rally people to come and throw stones on worshippers at the Western Wall. I mean, you know the logistics and the topography. The Temple Mount is overlooking the Western Wall, and if you don't put guards, they throw real stones, not pebbles, heavy-duty rocks.
And this group of a few weeks ago, this renegade group of what is it? The ones who have been kicked out of the what is that sect? That other Hasidic kind of sect, not the Hasidim, but the
You have a group of ultra-nationalist
Yes,
fascistic group by Ben Gvir, a guy by the name of Ben Gvir, a
but
follower
I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember the group that threw them out. It's also an Eastern European whatever. They tend to do the singing. They are more singing oriented than the Hasidim. Anyway,
Satmar?
no,
they are not.
Satmar is part of the
Satmar are not going to the temple.
Yeah, Satmar is Hasidim. I come from Satmar, and I'm very familiar with that.
Okay.
Yeah, you are from you originally.
I'm from the town of Satmar.
You know them.
Yes, and
Okay.
actually, there's a hotel next to me, which has become the Miami place for Satmar Hasidim, believe it or not. And it's very funny. Anyway, not funny, almost weird. Anyway, they apparently were the ones who decided to slaughter a lamb before Pesach up on the Temple Mount. They were coming up to with a live lamb, and that apparently
right. That's Ben Gvir. That's
okay.
That's semi. They're fascist Jews.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is like any other people. We are not pure.
Yes, but apparently they've been thrown out of the group that they found themselves in originally. I forget their name. I know them because I've met some very normal ones.
Okay.
Arie, how much or what do you think the role was back when Islam was founded and the Jews of Arabia rejected Muhammad, rejected what he wanted, didn't want to ally with him, didn't want to convert, and I mean, didn't he get like incensed and?
Oh yeah, he got incensed and killed one member of a tribe, chased out another member of a different tribe. And it's very interesting. Muhammad is a very peculiar leader. Think about it. He's a prophet. He has a revelation from God, and he is a political and military leader. And this is something unique. It's not a Jesus who about sacrifice and showing the other cheek. This is a different kind of a leader, and who create and unified the people who were idol worshippers and turned them around and gave them a strong political leadership. And if you're noticing, the current King Abdallah is the 54th direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. So I went at one point, because of our Middle East activities, I was invited with 2,000 more people from all over the country to a national prayer breakfast in the Hilton Hotel. And at the time it was President Bush, and King Abdallah was there. And he gave a speech and he said, I'm the 43rd direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. Very interesting. Now, what happened to him? He was chased by his grandfather was chased by Ibn Saud, and the British gave them a shelter and created the Kingdom of Jordan, and for another son, a Kingdom of Iraq. Kingdom of Iraq disappeared. They killed that particular individual, Faisal, because he created some kind of a peace accord and recognized the right of Jews to have their own state. And he was not forgiven for that. He was poisoned with arsenic in Switzerland. Everybody was involved and either was defeated by Israeli soldiers or tried to accommodate and come of a peaceful resolution, was killed or was a target of assassination attempt. From King Sadat, from President Sadat to the late King Hussein, who was who barely avoided being assassinated, to his grandfather Abdallah, who was assassinated in 1951, to all the leaders of the Arab world who were in charge of leading their militaries in 1948. All of them were assassinated. But that's a different kind of a class.
I have one question, Arie.
Only one?
Right now.
For now, yeah.
I'm reading a book. Let me get it. Just give me a minute.
Sure, take your time. So at the meantime, what do you think about those caricatures?
When I saw them, Arie, I was thinking how the Palestinians appropriated the classic kind of portrayals that happened in Europe, that were in Nazi Germany. They just kind of lifted the portrayals and just turned, they turned things around, but they basically used the same kind of imagery. And they just, to me, they appropriated it and a lot of the concepts and other kinds of tropes about the Jews in the world. They just kind of like lifted it from Christian Europe and then kind of like reappropriated it for their own devices, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From what I remember reading or hearing.
Alan, I think
Morris is back. Okay.
Yeah. So here, this book, I don't know if you've seen it before.
What is the title?
The Storyteller of Jerusalem. It's a book by, the guy's name is Wasif Jarahariya.
Never heard of him.
Okay, he lived from 1904 to 1948. So this is basically, these are his diaries. He was an oud player, and he talks about his life during the Ottoman time up until, the 48 war. But what's interesting is that there was, at that time, there seemed to be pretty good relations between the Arabs, Christian Arabs and Jews. They got along, they went to each other's mitzvahs and things like that he talks about in this book. And it seems that when the British came and defeated the Ottomans, that's where things kind of seemed to go bad for everybody, because on one hand you had some of the British were for the Arab countries because they had their different countries that they supported, and then on the other hand you had some Jewish interests there that wanted a Jewish state, and I think that's kind of where the Arabs just didn't want that. They didn't want a Jewish state.
No, they didn't. Why would they? When the situation was very good for the Arabs, when the Jews were very much dependent on Muslim rulers, because they were never citizens in a Muslim universe. They were subjects, and they paid poll tax and other taxes, and they were never, it's a very hierarchical, very rigid, autocratic system that Islam is the rule of the land, with some exception, because the Ottoman Empire was falling apart. So if you were a citizen, if you came from Europe with an Austro-Hungarian passport, when there was any ill element of discourse, you went to the consul of the Austrian Empire, and you had an exemption. You were like a diplomat in terms of not being under the rule of the Ottomans. So there were all kind of issues, but the attempt to romanticize is nonsense. You need to ask all the Jews who lived at the time. There was any notion of equality.
Well, but if I understood Morris correctly, did you say it was Christian Arabs and Jews, or all Arabs and Jews?
Oh, Christian Arabs. And
Right, that's the way I understood it. And then they're both.
So I did. What did you say? That the Christian Arab and Jews were getting along? Is that
Yes.
what?
yeah.
Oh, I thought everybody. Yes and no.
Well,
But the dominant factor in terms of demography in the land were Muslims, and they were totally in the notion was that they have total patronage, and they want a total control of the land, and that's following the principle of Islam, of waqf. This is a sacred trust of Muslims, and whoever betrayed should be killed. Look, we had a program, I think I shared with you, for 15 years in the Middle East. And we want to write a book about it. I mean, it was sponsored by the government, the US government. In 2012, the Secretary of State, this is recorded, right? I shouldn't talk. That's the problem, I cannot talk. I will say the following. We had a video of all the participants in our Middle East activities. And the government really want to show it. It was really a wonderful display and show how the American government sponsorship of educational activities and creation of pro-business environment and supporting a young entrepreneur is really working miracles. So they really wanted to show it. And I couldn't allow it. I was the director of the program. I couldn't allow it because what will happen if people will see these individuals working together with Israelis in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Gaza, in the West Bank? They will be killed. And that's I think, hit the target. If you have wonderful people who are moderate, open-minded, I'm talking only Muslims, but the leadership and the street are pushing in a certain direction, so their life are in danger. You remember a few years ago when there was a talk by Anatoly Sharansky, who was liberated from the gulags of the Soviet Union. He wrote a book about what does it mean democracy when you stand in the public square and you can speak out your mind. It is so true. It is so. In Israel, you can scream your head off in many directions, in many voices. In the United States,
A little less
sometimes
so.
with a gun. But in authoritarian, totalitarian countries like China, Russia, let alone in Muslim-oriented countries, you cannot do it in public. You can do it in hiding, in small, safe spaces. And that's the difference, and that's the tragedy of the situation.
Can I, if we're finished with Morris's?
Please.
The caricatures that you sent out all seem to be from like 1990 or mid 80s and beyond, or and forward.
Mm-hmm.
And what I remembered reading or hearing an historian saying is that I don't know how much there was before 48 or how bad it was, but after 48, as Israel, as the USSR was hoping Israel or expecting Israel to fall under its political wing because of the socialist, the very strong socialist bent of the country. When it didn't, and then in '67, when Israel defeated all of their client countries, all the Arab countries, they couldn't deal with it. And, they took the state-sponsored anti-Semitism of Russia, of the Soviet Union, and exported it to the Arab countries. And this is kind of what we're seeing in these drawings.
Very interesting. But first of all, in 1948, if we will have this class, I'll share with you. In 1948, the Israeli intelligence, at the time it was exposed only in the 80s, when secret intelligence material was off the censorship list. We realized that there were Nazis, intelligence officer and bomb expert who came from Nazi Germany via Syria and Egypt to help the Palestinians in Nablus. I'm talking 1948. In 1950s, some of the Nazi expert on missile construction on V1 found a place in Egypt. The Israeli Mossad was so scared about this, and they tried, and they did assassinate 2 of them. And at one point, Ben-Gurion, the prime minister, went to Adenauer, the German chancellor, and persuaded them to withdraw them and forced them to come back to Germany. So Nazis and militant Islamism and Arab countries were connected regardless of the involvement of the Soviet Union. We know that in Syria, we have had some of the Nazi military experts, most of them who came to either to Egypt or to Syria, converted to Islam, became Muslim. So they were immune from basically being put on trial in different countries, or extradited back to Germany or to any other place, because they were Muslim native of the country. It's a depressing kind of a story. Haj Amin al-Husseini, because your reading came out in a bad shape, something very interesting about this guy, at one point he became the Grand Mufti with unbelievable salary. And then when he was responsible for the rebellion, in 1936-37, you are familiar with the Balfour Declaration that gave the recognized right of Jews to establish a national home in Palestine, Israel. In 1937, there was a committee, some kind of a committee by Lord Peel that recommended splitting the country to 2, one for an Arab state and one for a Jewish state. The Jewish state was supposed to be a tiny sliver of land, which included all the area from Rehovot, about 40 kilometers, about 20 miles south of Tel Aviv, along the seashore to Haifa, which include also some part of the Galilee. That's it. About 35 to 40% of what Israel was in 1967. The rest was supposed to be Palestinian. Now, Haj Amin was leading the Palestinian group to the negotiations. He was the leader. And he rejected it. And he said to Lord Peel, there was a conversation, and Lord Peel, so what will happen to the Jews? He said, God will take care of them, which means he will kill them. That was the conclusion that the Peel understood, that he doesn't see any way for peaceful solution and splitting of the land. Now the Jews, on the other hand, here is that something important because of the climate today of viciously anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist all over the world, and unfortunately in the US. Leadership of the Jews, and Ben Gurion at one point was thinking also greater Israel. He was accepting a smaller pie because they were thinking in 1937 about the coming Holocaust. Everybody sensed it. Begin, who was not there, but the revisionists who were in the leadership, who were the extremist right wing, who wanted to expand the Jewish state all over the territory, also across the Jordan River, were reluctant but accepted this pragmatic resolution of a smaller Israel to save the forthcoming Holocaust. You have no idea how people realize that the Holocaust is going to happen. My mother, who survived the Holocaust and was in Poland at that time, she listened to the speeches of Hitler and she spoke German, and she knew that they are going to be destroyed. There was a certainty of it's like a tornado that you see the forecast and you know it's coming and it's going to destroy you, and you don't have a underground shelter, nothing. And the Mufti was in cahoot with this group. Let's destroy the Jews. So nothing happened with this idea. I mean, you need an agreement, and the British were afraid to impose it. They were afraid because everybody was looking to the forthcoming, everybody realized the war is going to come. In spite of the great capitulation in Munich, and then you have a war. And you don't want to antagonize the Islamic world. You may not know it, but the largest contingent of the British military in the Middle East was Indian. Half of them were Muslim. And that's the calculation. You need all the forces at your disposal. And we are not sure yet in 39 and 40 if the United States, no one knew what will happen later. So it's only Britain. Now, the Haj Amin al-Husseini started the revolution, the Great Rebellion. The British destroyed him. He fled the country, ended up in Iraq. And Iraq is highly coveted land because of oil. And there is an attempt and a creation of a government that is pro-Nazis that lasts for about a month or two. And the British are saying commando unit to fight them. Among them, leaders of the of Etzel, you know, the revisionist group led at the time by Raziel. Another person of interest that you're familiar very much with is Moshe Dayan. And Moshe Dayan was shot by a sniper, and that's how he lost his eye. And this failed attempt to create a pro-Nazi government failed. The British are coming to Iraq in June of 1941. The one who created all this mayhem in Iraq is Haj Amin al-Husseini. At the time, there was, when the Brits are coming and putting down this rebellion, there was an outburst of spontaneous attack on Jews by the military soldiers who were incited to kill Jews because they said the Jews are in control of the communication system, and they alerted the British, and they gave instruction how to destroy the revolution. So within 3-4 days, 600 Jews were massacred in Baghdad. Never happened before. Horrible story. Haj Amin, after that, is fleeing to Tehran, dressed as a woman. And from Tehran, he finds his way to Rome, and in November, there is a mistake on your outline. In 1941, November, he is in Berlin meeting the Führer. Now, the Nazis were captivated by the Arabs, not by Arabs, by Muslims.
They were
Himmler,
what?
they were fascinated by the Muslim. Himmler, the head of the SS, he said there is something very special about the Muslim. They are like us. What does it mean, like us? Mein Kampf is a story about my fight, my struggle. Muslims are fighting. They have a jihad against their enemies. They are not like the Christian who turn their other cheek and talking about appeasement and peace. They are really fighting. That's the essence of their religion. And Himmler said, we need them on our side. They will fight against the communists, against Russia. They hate Jews, we hate Jews. They don't like democracy. They have the idea of a Islamic leader. We have one. We have a Führer. We will take the Muslims and find a leader, charismatic leader like Haj Amin al-Husseini. And so here you have the beginning of the Unholy Alliance. Haj Amin al-Husseini is the religious leader who basically was attractive to the Nazis. And he had the political sense to take advantage of it. He said, yes, I am going to recruit Muslims to fight for the Nazi cause.
Arie, how did the Nazis rationalize the fact that they weren't white?
That's a wonderful point. So here, Rosenberg.
Of course, they did that with the Japanese. They made an alliance with the Japanese, so aren't white either.
Okay, so here is the very good question. Rosenberg, the Nazi ideologue, was horrified. How can you say it? When you read Mein Kampf put the Arabs one notch above the mud people, the blacks, and the Jews, one notch above them, but not much. They are horrific, Semitic, crazy, are not obeying, not discipline, not following any discipline, nothing. Dangerous people like the Jews, almost like the Jews. So they are coming to Hitler, and it's almost like Saturday Night Live. After Hitler met the Mufti, and they said, how can you talk to him? He's an Arab. He's not an Aryan. He said, what are you talking about? Look at him. He has a fair skin. He has blue eyes. I'm sure one of his ancestors to be basically probably raped his mother, and he has Aryan blood in his veins. This is the sick mind of Nazism. We need to use them, and they will be very beneficial to us. So the role of Haj Amin became central in recruitment. They gave him a villa in Berlin, of course, confiscated from Jewish families. They helped him to create also a school for Qadis, or the equivalent of a religious school for religious leader who will be affiliated to troops who were recruited in the Balkan state. They are Muslim in Bosnia. So in 1941, after the the Germans are expanding the war to Eastern Europe, Haj Amin al-Husseini became the rallying point to recruit Muslims in Bosnia, Croatia, and Albania. He goes with Himmler, with the SS. I'll just give you an indication how important he was. He got a salary equivalent of $10,000 a month. A general in a German army at the time earned about $2,000 a month. So this tells you something about Haj Amin. He had an entourage of bodyguards, all of them Waffen-SS. Whatever he wanted, he got it.
How did the Palestinians,
I can, Judy?
I just wanted to know how the Palestinians remember him, and do they acknowledge his Nazi sympathies and such?
Okay, not only they recognize him, they see him as their leader. Arafat came in Memorial Day when he died in 1970. He said, "He is my inspiration. He is my leader."
Kol hakavod.
But it's more confusing. I'll tell you an anecdotal story of my own experience. We had a program and we brought educator teachers in high school from Ramallah, West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, about 25 Arab teachers from all these countries. And in Minnesota, you have a history center. A history center is a center that you want to acculturate people to recognize different immigrant group who came to Minnesota. So in one session, you have folders of Jews, survivors of the Holocaust. So they created a study session that you teach kids in middle school about biography of people who came to Minnesota from Holocaust survivors with their own personal stories. And the Palestinians couldn't believe, they were amazed to learn about it. They had no clue what is the Holocaust, and they asked innocently, why did they want to kill those Jews? They did do nothing. They just live in all these places. Some of the Israelis became very angry and said, they thought that they are Holocaust deniers. They said they didn't know the Holocaust existed. The only people who learned something about the Holocaust were Lebanese, because they are a different system they live in a different universe. It's a multicultural, open society, very much middle class, and very much try to be democratic. So they knew, and they really told to the other Arabs, but the Arabs genuinely were speechless, had no clue about this at all.
Amazing.
This is
Yes,
Diane
Diane.
Yeah,
Diane, we cannot see you. Are you asking a question?
no, I just wanted to contribute. I contribute. Here I am.
Here you are. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. I just wanted to contribute something regarding, now this may not have, I'm positive this did not come into play with the Germans, but I have also understood that Arabs are the original Caucasians. They come from the Caucasus Mountains. And so they're considered, you know, this is stuff I've heard most recently. They're considered white people because of that. They're the original white people, so to speak, where we get the word Caucasian from. I don't know if anybody else has heard that, but I've heard that several times from several different quarters. So I just wanted to toss that in. I don't know how.
So that explained the Aryan nation of giving them some kind of rehabilitation in Aryan universe. But it didn't work. Look, what happened in reality in Nazi Germany, and I will forward via Sheila books to read. I think this is the most interesting book called Islam and Nazi Germany War by David Mutadel. Very balanced book, too cautious about the role of the Mufti. And there is another book, more pointed, The Mufti of Jerusalem and the Nazis, written by a German historian, very important. I will provide the titles for you to read. There was a problem because the Germans had to accommodate all kind of religious requests of the Arabs. For example, not to eat pork. So they need to allocate extra budget for kosher Islamic style. And the military leadership was very upset, said we don't want to allocate money for them. They need to pray 5 times a day. They didn't want to accommodate that request either. So Himmler and the SS, Waffen-SS, were forcing on the Wehrmacht to do this. So it tells you about what the real, the average German was thinking about Arabs. They thought of them as one notch maybe elevated from the Jews, but barbarian altogether still. I would say something. In the last week of life, this is another book that I don't have it here, came 2 years ago by another German historian. Hitler said, my greatest mistake that I didn't trust the Arabs, the Muslims, not the Arab, the Muslim. They are my most ferocious and loyal fighters. They fought unbelievably ferociously against the Russians. We didn't have such a good fighters. I should have adopted them all along. I was hesitant to do it because I was thinking about my idiotic partner, the Italian. And basically Hitler said, well, I didn't emphasize the importance of the Muslims because Italy was my partner and they wanted to rule and create imperial colonial Italy all over the Arab countries of the Mediterranean. And he said, my greatest mistake, he wrote it 1 week before his death. They are the real fighter. They understand war. They understand sacrifice. And they understand following leadership. And they love to kill. Unbelievable stuff. Now, Haj Amin al-Husseini gave us several speeches on radio. Radio is the most popular. It's like what we have today with all the social media, and so he was on the air all the time. He had 2 powerful stations, one in Bari, southern Italy, and one in Berlin. And in one of his speeches in June of 1944, he said, beware of the American Jewry. They control everybody. If they win the war, they will establish their rule all over the world. So it was not necessarily only about the Zionists and the Jewish population of Palestine, but Jews in general. He said, when we will come to power, we will kill all of them. It's either us or them. So in that respect, he was fully acknowledging and incorporating Nazi ideology. In 3 of the letters, I think I sent one of the letters, I'm not sure if that what came out right or wrong. There is an exchange of letters between Haj Amin al-Husseini and the foreign minister or prime minister of Hungary. The Hungarian, the Nazis had an idea of exchanging trucks for Jews. So the Jewish people from the Middle East will buy trucks for the German army, and the Nazis will release about 900 children, transfer them via Turkey, which was neutral, to the mandatory Palestine. Haj Amin al-Husseini wrote a letter to Himmler, to Hitler, and to the Hungarian, said, I put veto on this. Send them, if they go to Israel or to Palestine, they will become soldiers against the Palestinians. Send them to a safe place, Poland. Euphemism for Auschwitz. We know from the Nuremberg trial that the number 2 of Wyszynski, which was the deputy to Adolf Eichmann, was in close contact with Haj Amin, and he said, this is controversial, that Haj Amin visited Auschwitz and urged the people to use it in a more efficient way to kill more Jews. Now, this is is not totally endorsed as a real genuine document, but it's claimed. But it's for certain known that he was in close contact with Adolf Eichmann and knew very well about the final solution. I told you it's depressing, but we need to know it. I'll always tell you some personal story. When we brought here to Minnesota, the oldest group, Israeli, Palestinian, Jordanian, Lebanese, we brought them also to meet religious institutions. So I brought about 40 of them to my synagogue, conservative like Har Zion, this is Bet Jacob, and they said to see services. And it was interesting. And we brought them to a mosque in Fridley, which is a large Muslim community. Before going to that, I went to a different mosque and I spoke to the Imam who was from Hebron. And he tried to impress me. And he said, you know, if we had known how Jews are suffering in the Holocaust, we would have helped them with all our heart. So he thought that I'm totally ignoramus. And I said, remember Haj Amin, where he stayed? So conversation ended at that moment and I was let go.
Oh, they love the Jews, especially in Aleppo.
I don't like to generalize, but to say the Arab, the Muslim, because I found very good people. And that's why I don't like to generalize. But I'm telling you, the disturbing point is these people who are moderate, who are rational, are quiet. Because the street is very much extreme. And you are safe to be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I hope we are not moving in that direction in this country. When extreme are taking over the public space and people who are normal, rational, and moderate are afraid.
Right.
Arie, in light of all of this, what are your thoughts on the Abraham Accords? Like of that development? What are your
wonderful?
thoughts?
I'm all for it.
Okay.
You know, I'll tell you something. When there was the Arab Spring, I was very much upset with the way that President Obama dealt with it. He came to Egypt and spoke about democracy and disappeared. And there was mayhem and rebellion, and you have total anarchy. And the extremist Islamists took over and they butchered Christians all over Egypt. Here, they didn't cover this story. They spoke, oh, genuine expression of democracy. It was not. It was chaos and mayhem. And it's a problem. I was very happy with the peace, even though Egypt was not a democracy when Sadat was assassinated and Mubarak took over, for a very selfish reason. I was a combat soldier. If there was another war, I may be in a war and die. So I appreciate peace.
Mm.
I just plain appreciate peace, no war. And there is a quiet relationship in between Israel in Egypt, and that's good.
Hmm.
And so Abraham Accord is also in that venue. Let's see what happens.
Arie, did the Arab Muslim population in North Africa help the Germans during the wait, let me, did they help the Germans in the German attempt to exterminate the Jews? You know, did they help them round them up to send them to concentration camps?
Unfortunately, yes. In Tunisia and Libya, they did. They did, and they were basically cajoled by Haj Amin in his speeches from Bari, Italy, to do that. So you won't believe it, but Jews from Tunisia ended up in Auschwitz. Auschwitz was a place that you have an international of misery of Jews who were assembled there by force.
But wasn't that because Italy basically controlled Libya and Tunisia, or
Right?
had interest there?
Yeah, but the German didn't trust the Italians, and the Italian soldiers were not really into it. So what happened? The German took over the campaign, and Rommel was there, and the Waffen-SS came there. So they were the people. The Italians are separated in terms of ideology in regard to Nazi Germany. Southern Italy, land of distrusted authoritarian regime, did not like Mussolini, and were very much helpful. I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that when the Allied forces invaded Sicily, they were very much held by the mafia from New York. You know that, or don't you?
They were helped by whom?
Oh yeah, then the mob from New York helped pull their strings in Sicily, and they were very helpful in gathering intelligence on movement of German army and Italian fascists, because the fascists destroyed the mafia in Italy. So they were very helpful.
Oh.
So I don't have much to add.
We have met a number of emigres in the Chicago area who are Christians who come from Egypt, Syria, etc. And they love Israel and hate Arabs because of the way their people, the Christians, have been massacred, beaten, tortured,
Yeah,
mistreated, you know, which is historically fairly recent in terms of just not leaving them alone and ignoring them, you know, and keeping them as lower class, you know, a lower level of citizen. But, you know, and I never knew that it might have started with the Arab Spring, but boy, do they hate the Arabs.
yeah. I'll tell you a story. I always have some story to tell you. We had a program in Bethlehem, okay? Used to be a Christian city. Now 80% of the Christian fled since the Oslo Accord, when Bethlehem became part of the Palestinian Authority territory. They keep a head, a mayor who is Christian, because this is a Christian city, birthplace of Jesus. But most of the Christian fled, and you have a lot of Islamic fundamentalists in Bethlehem. So we met a person, I of course will not mention his name, who is a Christian, Greek Orthodox. These are the people who are Christian there. He owns a chain of stores and hotels. And in a closed session, he told me a story when the Palestinian took over, immediately people confiscated his land. And he went to Arafat and he said, you know, I'm the owner of this land. Please, Mr. President, do something about it. And he went to the governor of Bethlehem, who is another PLO guy, and he said, take care of it. And so this individual went to this governor and he said, here is he opened the drawer desk, put $100,000 here. So he was so mad, he donated the land to the Greek Orthodox Church, and they went to international court and got the land, but he lost it. And he said to me in closed door, why Israel didn't annex us? Why?
Meanwhile, what is the name of the woman who is the Christian Palestinian woman? I can't come up with her name right now. Who's
Nana Shrawe.
yes.
What a disaster.
Yeah.
I'm
Hey,
sorry,
they are
disaster
Christian,
for Israel.
they are Christian who hate Jews.
No,
Right.
but the reporter who was killed and the funeral, that's a disaster for Israel.
No, it's
It's
true.
been all over the American news and Israel looks really bad.
Israel always looks really
No,
bad.
you know, people are making horrible mistakes. The police was terrible. What can I tell you? One thing I want you as American Jews to understand, it's important. I have two hats, one as an Israeli, one as an American. You cannot look at the country and make it a city on a hill, a virtuous state. Any state make mistake. America make mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
It's the nature of, and that's really happened. It happens. What can I tell you? It does happen.
But it
Hey,
just,
Arie, I'd like to ask you a question on something, because you obviously know a lot about this. We were talking about Nazi Germany, but I think all these lessons apply to past and present as well. I saw a couple of series that were created in other countries. One was it was created in France about World War II, and there was another.
Claude Lanzmann, Shoah.
No, it was Un Village Français. It was a French village. It was a
I saw it.
multi-year series. Yeah, it was very good.
I saw all of it.
And yes, it was very good, wasn't it? And
Yes,
there was another one.
It was very good till a certain point at the very end when there is a retrospect and they are going about Deir Yassin out of nowhere and they put a horrific massacre of Arabs in a village, and the very end is very hostile, very left-wing kind of interpretation. But
I want to ask you about two things. One is regarding that, and then there was another series that I saw. It was out of Serbia, and that one followed a Ladino family during World War II. And that was also it was like a 12-part series. One thing that I took away from both of those, and I want to ask you how accurate this is that it seemed as though during World War II, that when the Nazis came into these countries, there was a nationalist police force, of course. And the nationals, in both of these series, it seemed that the nationalist police force was worse than the Nazis.
yeah,
It was like it gave them the opportunity to take out all this. Was that true? And or do you know?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you seem to know everything. So
No, I'm not. My field is Italian Renaissance. Where I feel at home is Italian Renaissance. because of my family history, you know, my mother, but I'll tell you the story about Ukraine. We talk about Ukraine and they are fighting and we need to support them. My uncle was a soldier in the Russian army, in the Red Army. And when they were taken prisoners by the Nazis, that was in July of 1941, the Ukrainian soldiers who were also in the Red Army immediately pointed out the Jews. They took the Jews and they put them in they put barbed wire around them and they torched them to death. So that's how my uncle died. And my mother, who knew about it, she said it was easy to flee. I mean, the ghetto was just a small barbed wire. It was not electric wire. You could flee, but where to? They were all supportive of the Nazis, all of them.
And the reason I asked that question is because I wanted to get your viewpoint on it, because it scares me, things that are happening in this country and this whole nationalist view that seems to be an undercurrent here. And that's why I was kind of asking.
Well, this is another story, but I don't know if you know my story. You probably don't. So I was, but that I have to leave at 3 o'clock. I was a professor of history at St. Cloud State, the second largest state university in Minnesota. Okay, I gave a talk how my mother survived the Holocaust. And when I gave this talk, the chair of the department came to me before. He said, "Why do you need to talk about this dark chapter in German history? Waffen-SS were wonderful people. They did not participate in the Holocaust." And 2 weeks later, I was let go. I mean, I continued to teach to the end of the year, but I was really let go in terms of not being interviewed for position. And there was another professor who said, and this is confirmed in an affidavit to the court, that he had to fumigate his office because the previous occupant of the office was a Jewish guy, and their insects and viruses that need extra fumigants. This is in America in the year 1999. I taught a class. You ask if it cannot happen here. Here it is. I was the only guy who gave ever a class in that university about Jewish history. And there were 35 students. There are no Jews there. It's St. Cloud is a rural, small town, redneck university. And I gave this class and I asked, "Why are you taking the class?" And a student stood up and he said, "My father said that you need to put the Jews in one line and take a machine gun and mow them down, all of them. And I wonder why you hate Jews. I've never seen a Jew in my life." Now, I expected the class of 35 to basically shriek in dismay. Now, I said, "Why are you?" I don't see any shriek. We hear it all the time. So this is here. And this is my response. There are more on this one. If you want to go put my name online, Anti-Semitism, St. Cloud State University, you will read a lot about it. It's a terrible story, but this is it. It's only because you ask the hypothesis here, it can happen.
That's right.
We need to be vigilant and strong and stand up for, and
There's a
teach,
book that's called that, by
educate.
the way.
And educate, I mean.
Arie, I thought Serbia, this is interesting. I thought Serbia was very good to its Jews during the war, that they hid their Jews.
They were very good, the Serbs. But the Serbs you have all kind of ethnic group there. you have Muslims who were participants in the Waffen-SS. You have Croat.
Oh, yeah, not
who were-
Croat. The Croats were like the Ukrainians.
Right.
Yeah, no, but I thought the Serbians hid their Jews.
Serbians were helping the Jews, and the Jews were fighting with them. Yeah.
Okay.
My dear friends, I'm sorry. What can I tell you? We need to stand up and fight.
Yes.
It never stops.
No.
This is what it
It's
is.
a very scary time in general.
I see Maurice want to
Yes.
say something.
No, well, it's the oldest hatred.
Mhm.
You
It's
know?
the oldest. It's true.
And may I also say, because everybody's talking here talks about the right-wing nationalists, but I do find that very disturbing, but I find even more disturbing because of my liberal views in so many ways, the left-wing anti-Semitism that's so prevalent, particularly on college campuses, and you know, creating the leaders of the future and the things that you hear about that are being said in Congress. So I think that we have to look left and right as we prepare ourselves for the future.
Good
Yes,
Good point.
Left and right. Yeah.
that's
We need-
correct.
Mhm.
It's very interesting. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago at a large gay pride parade. there were a group of Jewish lesbians who wanted to march carrying an Israeli flag, and they were ushered off. They were not allowed to participate
Mhm.
We are
because
talking.
so many of the left-wing leaders of radical feminists are really anti-Semitic as well.
Right. Now it's very interesting. I think I one of them was from it was in Chicago, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
So one of them came from Minnesota, and I met her, and she told me the story. What you're telling me, the largest parade, the largest gay city in the Mediterranean is Tel Aviv.
Mm, I believe it.
Now
Yeah.
I will tell you something. I don't care if it's recorded, but it's fine. There is a gentlemanly agreement between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. If you're a gay man, it's not about women. If you're a gay man and you're exposed and feel threatened in the West Bank, after vetting by the Israeli security services, you will be allowed to relocate to Israel. Because
Wow.
you are safe in Israel.
Yeah. Wow.
And you will need to know that. If you're a gay person or a lesbian in a Muslim country, openly gay, your life is in danger.
Mhm.
And how come all this progressive group don't see it? What does it say about the notion of, they confiscate the term of progressive. They're not progressive. This
That's
is not
right. They're
progressivism.
progressives.
They're not progressive, they're radical.
Yeah.
They're
And
radical,
regressive.
like there's radical right,
Mhm.
Or radical left.
radical left. You know, the people who are the radicals, as we were just nodding about, the radicals, you know, they have their belief system and don't bother them with facts. They're very rigid in their system. And the rest of us, somewhere on the spectrum, you know, still believe in small L liberal democracy and the idea that people can have different political beliefs within that system, and that everybody should be a member, an equal member of that system.
Mhm.
But the extremes, you know, they're against anything, not just Jews, they're against everyone who doesn't hold their belief system.
Correct. You're absolutely right. Well,